Hello YouTube, today I want to talk about One Piece and specifically Sanji and his mental blocks. See, there's a very interesting thing when you look at the monster trio as a whole and how they kind of improve and get stronger. While all of them of course do plenty of physical training and a lot of that we get to see or at least we get to hear about and joke about, things like Sanji's most basic training is defending the fridge from Luffy and Zoro is constantly seen training somehow, monster-sized weight that he's just swinging around, stuff like that. Or Luffy's whole thing about just needing to become more in tune with his devil fruit and understanding how hockey works and how they can interact with each other. And as long as he can just be creative enough, then he can continue using himself and his body to its maximum potential, his imagination, right? But then there's the thing with Sanji. See, if you strip away what makes the monster trio unique, what makes them, they all have very clear defining thing. If you look at Luffy as just Luffy, not the boy who ate the gum gum fruit, not the future Joy Boy or the current Joy Boy, however you want to phrase it. He is just Monkey D. Luffy, the boy who will be the king of the pirates. That's been who he was since the start, that's who he'll be at the end. And if you look at Zoro, he is the same way. Since we first saw him and all the way till now, he will always be telling you that no matter what the circumstances are around him or who he's telling it to, he is going to be the greatest swordsman in the world. But now let's take a look at Sanji. What exactly is Sanji going for? Yes, his dream is to find the All Blue, and we know that he's a gentleman because of what Zeph taught him, but outside of that, who and what exactly is Sanji when you kind of boil him down and take away all of this extra stuff? He doesn't have that kind of dream, that extra just like clarification on what he wants to be. And that's very intentional. That's a character flaw. See, this is something that we've kind of been seeing since Germa Double Six was introduced, and the Whole Cake Island stuff was all has to do with Sanji and all of like the mental blocks and kind of issues that he's had since he was a child all the way up until now, and the way that he just can't really see himself for who he actually is and how everyone around him sees him. See, when Germa Double Six is involved and the Whole Cake Island stuff goes down, he has this sense of almost shame. He even says it. He's not ashamed that he is a part of the family, as he's not. He was, kicked out, he was exiled, and he never really saw himself as part of the family as he was constantly ostracized and just made fun of by everyone. So he kind of sees it as more of just a shame that he has to be a Vinsmoke, the shame that he is still associated with them in such a way. And he always has this resentment towards everyone, so much so that it actually affects himself because no matter how much resentment he feels towards them, he still feels obligated to do stuff for them. Yes, of course, Zeph was being held hostage and could have been killed, but let's be real, the whole threats against the Straw Hat crew, as serious as they were because it was coming from an emperor, it's also against our main characters and it's against Luffy and Zoro, and sure, maybe they wouldn't have beaten Big Mom, but they probably could have gotten out of there and have just continued their journey, just unfortunately down a chef if they didn't decide to just try to steal him and get out of there. But it's not until really you start developing and seeing more and more, you're seeing more of the interactions between the family, and especially his interactions with his dad and with his sister Reiju, that you really get to see that Sanji is slowly going from, I will always be Vinsmoke Sanji, son of Judge, former prince of the Germa Kingdom, and he slowly becomes Vinsmoke Sanji, chef of the Straw Hat Pirates. He wants to be the right wing, or maybe the left wing, whatever you want to say. He wants to be a wing of the Pirate King. But even still, even with all of his development and understanding that even though, yes, he may hate his family, he still loves them deep down, which is just who he is as a character, it really helps, kind of progress him, right? But then it still has a massive mental block that we get to see in Wano, when we get to see him with the raid suit and interacting with Queen, who has another connection to Vinsmoke Judge. I don't know why I'm saying the last name, but has a connection to Judge, right? With the whole, I think it was called Mads, right? The scientist thing. So, there's this whole connection there and wanting to see the technology, and basically Queen only seeing Sanji as Sanji once saw himself, as nothing more than an experiment from Vinsmoke Judge of, the whole Germa Double Six and Mads, kind of continuing their, their experiments and stuff. That's kind of the way that Queen is seeing Sanji, that he is nothing more than another one of Judge's experiments, right? And that's the way that Sanji kind of saw himself, especially in the way that he kind of saw himself to the family, even though he wasn't an experiment because he was a failed one and he didn't have any of the perks, right? Except he does, because, through continuous use of the raid suit, I believe it's 3 times, he actually unlocks his latent potential. He unlocks all the mutant genes that have been inside of his body this entire time, but have been suppressed because of the medicine that his mother was taking while she was pregnant with him. But it's in this moment when he awakens into this, new form, we'll call it, that he immediately gets, prevented from truly reaching what it means to use these powers by a mental block, because immediately he sees that a woman is hurt and believes that it is his fault. And this is such a bad mental block that he has that he can't really even use his full potential, so much so that he's actually fearful of what it would be to go all the way. Even so much so that he asks Zoro that if anything were to happen to him, that he would want Zoro to kill him. That's how serious he was about his hatred of his family, even after the whole cake Island incident and all that stuff. But then he learns to accept it, that no, he didn't hurt the woman, that he, despite what his father did to him, is his own man. Yes, these powers are because of his father and because of the experiments, but that doesn't mean that his father made him. He made himself. Him and Zeph's teaching and Sora's teaching and being around Luffy and all of his new family, that he really learns that it doesn't matter of what had made me in the past, this is who I am. I get to choose what I do with all of my powers, right? And then he learns how to use, I don't think he learns how to use, but he starts using Ifrit Jambe instead of Diable Jambe, which is basically his whole leg is lit on fire with blue flame instead of red flame. So it's hotter, more powerful, and he's able to take out Queen. Another time that you get to kind of see this mental block he's having, that once it's broken, despite the fact that his body was physically strong enough and his body had continued to improve, because of this one mental block, he couldn't reach his peak. Once he gets past it, he's beaten ass again. Now let's jump forward to the current time in chapter 1187 on Elbaf. He's currently fighting Saint Killingham, who is the guy who's creating all the nightmare monsters here on Elbaf. And Sanji states that he knows his weakness, and by proxy the Knights of God's weakness, which is Color of the Supreme King, aka Conqueror's Hockey. He gets batted away, and we get to see like a memory of his, where he was talking to Scappa's Gaban, and I quote, "You should have the potential for it. However, in your case, for some reason, you possess a streak of masochistic instability." Throughout his time, we get to see him basically just, what this means is that he's consistently been seen beating himself up. He sees himself as lesser. He wants to be this great, powerful thing. He wants to be number 3 on the bounty list. It should be Luffy, Zoro, Sanji. But Jinbei's in the way. And that's kind of this way of the mentality to think of it of, sure, I am this extremely powerful person, but I'm not number 3. He can't see himself being what he truly is, even so much so that something as simple as a bounty can kind of knock him down a few pegs, right? And then the next quote, the next little line that Gaban says to him, "You must be a king too if you truly want to make Luffy the king of the pirates." A consistent thing of Sanji's character is that he's always been a prince of the Germa Kingdom, calling himself Mr. Prince when he was talking to Mr. Crocodile back during Little Garden in the Alabasta arc. He's never truly seen himself as anything more, which is very interesting because Zoro had no issue. Even though it's not truly like an official thing, he is the king of hell. And then, of course, Luffy wanting to become the king of the pirates. So it's interesting to see how the other 2 of the monster trio can so effortlessly, because they know who they are, they can understand who they are as a person, what others see as them, but they still have their own id and ego, right? This psychology stuff, you don't need to worry about it. But he has, they have their own sense of self, while Sanji is still kind of seeing himself as what he once was. So it'll be interesting in the next chapter and the chapters to come to see exactly how this develops. How does he go from Mr. Prince to Mr. King, or however he wants to be referred to as, and what will he be the king of? I mean, we have the king of hell and we have the king of the pirates, so what is Sanji gonna be? Is it just to go opposite of Zoro? If he's hell, I have to be heaven, which would make a bit of sense with his mother's name being Sora, which translates to sky. So there is that connection there, but it'll be interesting to see what he wants to be the quote-unquote king of. I just have my phone for notes. What he wants to be the king of, and also to see how this develops for his mental. Will him achieving Conqueror's Haki and understanding what it means to be a king, fully get rid of all of his mental blocks, and now the only thing he really needs is continuing to get his physical abilities stronger to improve his Hakis and whatnot? And then the last bit that interests me is how can this interact with Emu? Because we know that Emu has the ability to reverse a person's, morality and other effects, right? Turning the good people of Elbaf into these demons that were attacking each other. And, other miscellaneous sorts that we've seen, like the shallow contracts. So could Sanji, breaking through this limit, or while he's attempting to break through this mental block, be affected by Emu easier? If you still have this, ooh, I can't be a king thing, and then Emu flips you, now you see yourself as a king, but you see yourself more as a tyrant than a good king, right? Or could it also be the complete opposite fact? Once he breaks through his limits, he'll gain, almost an immunity, the same way that Luffy and Loki seemingly have when they were attacked by the same attack and just shrugged it off and said, I don't care. So, it'd be interesting to see how Sanji's mental continues to develop and to see how he breaks this last block to unlock his kingmanship and his Conqueror's Haki. But that'll do it for this video. If you did enjoy, then hit the like button and comment down below what you like so I can continue doing it. And if you didn't like the video, then that's totally fine. But if you didn't like the video, then go ahead and dislike, but don't forget to comment down below what you didn't like so I can continue to improve, so next time you see me, you have a more enjoyable experience. And if you want to know when I upload, instead of just finding me randomly, the best way to know is by subscribing. But that'll do it for this video. Until next time, bye guys.